one of the things that I've gotten so clear on in my work is it's less about they're wrong and I'm right, or I'm wrong and they're right. It's less about, is this aligned for me? And not to sound like all woo woo or manifester or whatever. But the truth is, it's okay if people are narcissists. I don't have to go and fix that. It's okay if people have different values than me, right? Like, it's okay if people misunderstand me. Ooh, that one is hard, but it is okay. I do not have to manage that. All I have to do is ask myself, is this like guiding me towards alignment with myself? Is this guiding me towards loving myself? And if it's not, then I can unpack it and analyze it. And I can also just move on, because the universe will keep bringing me the lesson if I don't get it this time.
Welcome to Grow with Robin Breckenridge, a podcast about stepping into the most fully expressed, aligned, and conscious version of yourself. Here, we dive into the real work of personal growth, establishing boundaries, understanding your patterns, building self-trust, healing emotional wounds, and creating relationships that feel safe, authentic, and fulfilling. I'm Robin, a life and relationship coach, and in each episode, we'll explore the tools, insights, and conversations that will help you not just improve your life and relationships, but truly transform them. You don't have to just go through it. Let's grow through it, and let's do it together. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I have already spent about the last 15 minutes laughing uncontrollably with my guest who is with me today. So we're already in a very joyous state, but there's a first happening today on my podcast. This is my first return guest on the podcast. So please welcome back Erin Watt.
Hi, thank you so much for having me back. I am so proud to be your first repeat guest.
Oh, I mean, who else? It was always going to be you, Erin. The spot was always reserved for you. So let me remind people who you are. And if you did not listen to Erin's episode, I believe you are my second guest on the podcast. Rewind back because I did a little bit more of a thorough bio on her last time. But Erin Watt is a relationship coach, speaker, and founder of Inner Ray. She has a background in neuroscience and brings both professional expertise and deeply lived experience to conversations around addiction, codependency, attachment, relationships, and emotional healing. Today, we are here to continue our conversation. Erin, we've been talking about narcissism on the podcast here for a couple episodes. And then that shifted kind of naturally into a conversation about relationships that feel addictive, relationships that, to others are completely illogical. Like, why wouldn't you just leave or block this person? So I want to continue that conversation, but we're also going to talk about attachment, nervous system, emotional withdrawal, and healing. We are also, Erin, going to talk about why some relationships can feel so consuming, why people can struggle letting go, and why emotional pain can feel almost physical, or like you are dying, or like you're going crazy, and what healing and reconnection to yourself can actually look like. So, Erin, if you don't mind kind of giving us your own little bio of like how you got here. Before I did this podcast, had the incredible, good fortune to read a book that Erin is writing right now, and you're still in the process of finishing it. I got to read it, and I think I left you like 3 voice notes, laughing and crying and in various states of excitement, because I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing. The book is incredible. So your book is about these type of relationships. So can you tell us, because I know this isn't something that you learned in a class. I think you have a lot of lived experience in these type of relationships. So just give us a little background on you and how you became so well-versed in these type of relationships.
Oh, well, first of all, just for the audience, this is kind of my book coming out party because I've been telling colleagues and clients about this book for a little while. And of course, my friends and family. but I have yet to really step into any kind of public platform to talk about it. So thank you, Robin, that you were always going to be the first place that I talked about this. And thank you to just your audience for holding this podcast with the knowledge that this has been many, many, many years in the making. My life, so many of my clients' lives, so many of my friends' lives have been a part of the process that led to this book. And sometimes in life, you know, I have an idea about who I am and I'm like, I'm going to do that. You know, when you're a little kid, you're like, I'm going to grow up and be president. Well, it turns out that I'm going to grow up and be an expert in love addiction, which I did not know was the plan.
It wasn't on your bingo card?
No. And it's like one of those things too, that I was like, really? I was getting a PhD in molecular neuroscience and here I am writing a book on love addiction. But okay, so how did I get here? I mean, I'm going to just start with the origin of this book and then kind of back up and just say that in my practice, I often work with people who are struggling with compulsivity in relationships. And that compulsivity, I think when people hear that, they usually think more of the addicted side. I find avoidance is also very compulsive. So I want to include that in this conversation. But a lot of my clients are really struggling with kind of identity instability and how that creates compulsivity and how they relate. And what I find is there are a lot of excellent books on attachment. There are some really good books on love addiction. They're pretty dated at this point, but most of them focus on a pretty narrow dynamic of people, which is women chasing unavailable men. And a lot of the foundation for this work, the codependency world, the love addiction world, the PM Melodies, the Melody Beatties, the people that Susan Peabody, who, and I want to be clear, these people changed my life and saved my life. The books that they wrote and the material that they put out there. And it is just not representative. The dynamic they speak about in their literature and their books does not represent what I see in my practice, which is I see people across all gender expressions, all sexuality expressions. I see it in mom-child relationships. I see it in work relationships and friendships. And so the origin of this book comes from me sitting with a college-age male client who was going through intense relational withdrawal. Like we're talking, if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me be clear. Suicidal, homicidal feelings related to relational rupture. And I went to go give him a book and I was like, man, there is no book that really I could have given him Facing Love Addiction. And that book might have shamed him because it was written for women chasing alcoholic or unavailable men. And he's over here going, well, is it not manly to feel this way? Which is so often what I see in my male clients. And then a lot of times too, there is this focus on alcoholism in a lot of these books because this literature came about at a time when I think our culture was realizing how addicted we were to drugs and alcohol. So then there came the codependency movement. And so much of that is built on the foundation of people are codependent when they are attached to an addict, right? And so if you don't fit into that demographic, a lot of the literature feels confusing and can almost counterintuitively end up shaming people. And then they feel more alone, more isolated, and go back into denial around the compulsions they're experiencing. So the origin of this book specifically came from, I feel like I have all of this knowledge to help people, and I didn't have a book or a couple books that I felt like I could comfortably give a high percentage of my client base. And I was like, well, I guess I have to write the damn book. So that is the origin story of the book. But the origin story of why this topic is so important to me is a much longer story. And I'm happy to go into that as we move through. But I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. And I agree with you. I'm not here to ever put down anybody else's work. I do feel though, within my own practice, like love addiction and attachment, I haven't found like the book where I'm like, oh my gosh, right? And I do think that so many books around, or at least the OG books around like codependency, are very heavily in the like kind of where we started to understand codependency, which was you were in relationship with an addict. In my own experience, Erin and I worked for a company together before we both went out on our own. And I think that a large portion of our client base were people that were struggling in what we would call love addiction. I know for me, that term was a little bit hard to stomach, and you are 20 plus years sober from drugs and alcohol, right? So when I met you, you were more integrated into the 12-step community. So love addiction was like kind of a common term in SLAA. Mm-hmm. And I came from Detroit, where there wasn't this like large 12-step community that I understood. I could be wrong, but that term just kind of turned me off. But then the more I got to know it, I was like, oh, okay, this totally makes sense. And this is a thing. And then the more I saw clients. So what I loved about reading the part of your book that I read is you had a whole different take on love addiction and love compulsion, or anything to do with that word love. So before we even go into the specifics of what this feels like relationally, can you tell us your take on the word love being used?
Yeah. So thank you for the setup to this question, because it's this topic is so close to my heart. And I'm going to just explain it this way. When I heard the term love addiction, the very first time I heard it, it was a big aha for me, because like you said, I was comfortable with the concept of being an addict. I'd been sober for many years, and it was like, oh, that makes sense. This is just as destabilizing, if not more, than my alcoholism. Like I got that. That made a lot of sense to me. But pretty immediately, and I'm talking like 24 hours or less, I also felt this immediate sense of, well, shit, I guess I don't get to have love like other people, because if I'm addicted to something, what does that mean in the 12-step world? Abstinence, right? So the framework was inherently defeating just from the get-go. From the very first time I ever read about or heard about love addiction, I was like, oh, so I guess that means that for the rest of my life, I am not going to get to experience love in the way that it has been framed, because I'm addicted to it. And so I hear this a lot of times also from people maybe in recovery from eating disorders or any kind of process addiction. There's this feeling of like, well, but I can't have a black and white relationship with this thing that is just part of the human experience. And so it felt very defeating. And over time, what I have really, and I'm telling you, this has been like 15 years of studying this topic, teaching about this topic, healing from this. What I have come to understand is that calling it love addiction is like calling alcohol or drug addiction sobriety addiction. Like it actually, explain. Yeah, it literally doesn't make sense. Yeah. Because love is the answer, right? Love is the solution. Love is the thing that there is a void inside of people who are struggling with this compulsion because they don't understand what healthy, secure love is. And so for me, a big part of my journey and even writing this book was I need to give people a compelling alternative. So if I'm going to come in here and complain about the term love addiction, I better sit with that and come up with something that makes sense. So all of that being said, the title of my book, which was one of the first things that came to me when I went to write this book, the solution took a little longer, but the title is called Love is Not a Drug. Because I think that that's like just baseline. That is so important for healing from this ism. And the subtitle is The Misappropriation of Love. Because to me, this is all about how culture and our inherited relational patterns, multi-generational ways that we've been taught to connect and love has been distorted. And that love is actually a very high conscious state. It literally cannot be addictive by nature. Yep. Like the true frequency and vibration of love is non-addictive.
It's also not negative at all.
Correct. And so, and I also want to be clear, because when I say this, people get kind of defensive. Desire and longing and craving and some of the things that go into being in relationship with others is also not bad. So I'm not trying to shame that, but those states of consciousness are inherently addictive. And if you have a nervous system that has relational trauma, or has maybe inherited the epigenetics of relational trauma. So even if you had a relatively secure childhood, but your great grandparents were Holocaust survivors, or, you know, your parents grew up in an alcoholic home, you have this nervous system set up where the rush of euphoria or the longing that comes from early relational experiences. We're talking about teenager experiences when you're like, oh my God, having your first crush. The biochemistry that comes with that feeling of like longing and attraction and desire can become incredibly addictive if you don't learn how to have a relationship with it. And that would be modeled through understanding what secure attachment is, understanding about what is healthy and acceptable in a relationship. The problem is, if we look at most of us, if we look at our parents, I'm not going to say everyone, there's a terrible model for that, at least that my parents are straight up, quote unquote, love addicts, right? And if we look at culture, if we look at what's shown in TV, in film, in songs, it's all, again, a misrepresentation of love. Now, if we look at spiritual text, there's actually a lot of really good information about what love is. You know, I'm not like a Bible quoter, but love is patient, love is kind, right? Mm. Like there's actually a lot of evidence that there is an understanding of love, but that gets distorted by this cultural overlay of what love is. And if we can separate the myths, separate these dysfunctional patterns that have been passed down, then the antidote to this compulsion, which I call relational compulsion, is to understand, embody, emanate, and attract this higher conscious state of love.
Okay, so that makes so much sense, shifting it from love compulsion to relational compulsion. Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I've referenced the map of consciousness several times on this show. I haven't figured out a way to integrate it into like an episode just yet, but there is nothing vibrationally negative about the energy of love. I do think love is sometimes doing the harder thing. Like it can stretch you, you know, then that can feel negative, but there's nothing negative about the vibration of love. So it logically doesn't make sense. Anybody who's been in a toxic relationship, like the highs are so good, but the lows are so bad that the undercurrent of the relationship is negative.
Yeah.
That isn't love. Yeah. But I mentioned in my last episode, like when I have people who are in this come to me, and if I were to dare say you're not in love with this person or what you're experiencing isn't love, they would walk out the door. They wouldn't feel heard and understood, because what they're experiencing feels like the deepest, most cosmic love they've ever experienced. So I don't think that it's a great idea. Like it, and they go to professionals often that are like, this isn't love. He doesn't love you, or she doesn't love you. What they're experiencing feels like love. But I think in my experience, it's void of self-love. Mm-hmm. Like when we're in this and we are willing to abandon ourselves and our well-being to keep a connection, we are not in the vibration of love with ourselves. That's why I love the work that both you and I do, because it's not just about, you know, improving the relationship that you're in. It's about looking at what's prohibiting you from being able to be in the vibration of love with yourself. And one other thing I just want to mention, because the epigenetics thing is like a whole other topic, but there's a really good book. I can't remember who wrote it right now, but it's called It Didn't Start With You. I'm not sure if you've ever read it, Erin, but it's so good. And it's a short read. But what are your thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I have so much. I'm taking notes.
I was going to say, I saw you taking notes. So
yeah. Oh yeah. No, because this literally is my favorite topic. So the way that when someone says to me like, oh, I'm so in love with them, one thing that I do, because obviously I think telling people they're wrong is usually not very effective, but I start to teach about attachment and craving and fear and anxiety. And I actually do use the map of consciousness a lot when I'm teaching about this. And I try to say to people, or I try to mirror to people, that attachment and love are also different, right? So, and then if you have a nervous system wired for insecure attachment, then attachment and love are actually the opposite. And so that's one of the things that I pull up attachment theory, and we talk about secure attachment versus anxious, avoidant, ambivalent attachment styles, which are all the insecure attachment styles. And the way that I explain it to people, because I think metaphors are helpful, there's a difference between hunger, being satisfied, and feeling satisfied because you're nourished, right? So if you're starving, then anything you eat is going to feel satisfying.
I'm laughing because there's going to be a lot of laughing, everybody who's listening. But in the last episode, I think, or two, I said someone could give you a Twinkie, which we know has no nutritional value. And if you're starved, that's the best meal you've ever had. And then I had, one of the listeners sent me just a Twinkie, like a Twinkie picture or like a GIF or whatever. I was laughing. So yes, we're saying the exact same thing. If you're starving, crumbs they feel like a full dang meal.
Totally. And so if you've never embodied or consistently had secure attachment, then an anxious avoidant attachment cycle feels satisfying, right? Because it's better than the devastation and loneliness of longing, of just sitting and longing. And so in the book, I talk about the pain scale in relationships, right? The emotional pain scale of 1 to 10. And a lot of times what people experience is they're living at a 7. They have a high tolerance for dysfunction and discomfort in a relationship. So the 7 is relatively high, but ending that relationship will throw them into an 8, 9, 10 on the pain scale. So then they get into another dysfunctional relationship and it feels like a 7. And they're like, well, this feels better.
Yeah.
Right? If they've never experienced going down the scale to where it's very low relational pain for long periods of time, or they experience being low on the pain scale is boredom, or, well, I guess I'm alone and I'm just going to be, with myself for the rest of my life, right? If that's their only experience with the low side of the pain scale, they'll always pick a 7. And does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And, I think if we look at the pain scale as 10 is I'm going to die, emotional pain, 1 being no pain. If you're at a 7 in relationships, because I believe the 7 is what's familiar to you. If people never had relational pain, a 7 would be intolerable. But if you were in a 7 physical pain, you'd probably go to the ER. And that's what we live in. And of course, then we're chasing these highs and we're chasing the moment that they're better, the connection is better, because we don't even know that lower part of the pain scale is something that's sustainable for us. And so when you say you're passionate about this topic, I'm also deeply passionate when I have people come in and they're at the 7. It's like, you don't have to live at the 7. That's awful.
Yeah. Agreed. Right? And I 100% lived at the 7 for most of my life. Like there's a term that I always deeply resonated with in the original love addiction literature. It's called unmet longing. And I lived in unmet longing. And the sad part is, to go back to one of the metaphors, I also had a restrictive eating disorder. So I lived hungry. Yeah. So I know if you can live hungry, you can live in unmet longing. Because hunger is an even deeper,
right,
primal cue. So if I can be hungry all the time, I can be in longing all the time. And so I learned very young how to tolerate that level of relational discomfort because, my parents were taught the same thing. So this isn't about blaming them.
Right.
But the relational soup I grew up in was really, really painful and uncomfortable and regularly destructive and devastating and inconsistent and avoidant and gaslighting. And so I always joke that I grew up in this like personality disordered circus, and then I left home and I put up a tent and I said auditioning. And I just kept introducing new people into my system to reenact these original wounds. And fortunately, because apparently I just have this calling to heal, I started to outgrow some of these patterns. But the way that happened, honestly, and this is where, you know, I have my own criticisms of 12-step, but AA saved my life because I started to meet people who would tell me that they loved me just because I existed. And in that program, I developed a relationship with some kind of spiritual entity that loves me, that I didn't have to earn or perform or work for. And even though I would project my own dysfunctional ideas of relationships onto a higher power, my higher power did not reciprocate that dysfunction. So over time, through the collective love I found in 12-step, through cultivating intimate friendships. I just had a dinner party last week for my birthday, and there were several people there that have known me a very long time. And I talk about, we grow up in public together. That's the saying in 12-step, like when you have to like learn really painful things in front of each other. And there was one woman there, and we were reflecting on a conversation we had maybe like 8 or 9 years ago where we were having dinner. And it was one of those moments where we were both kind of stepping into the threshold of our tolerance for closeness, a tolerance for intimacy in a friendship. And we both got really uncomfortable. Like I felt it, she felt it. And we sat there awkwardly for a few minutes. And then we started like laughing. And I'll never forget that moment because I was stepping into some secure attachment with someone, and that felt gross to me. It felt unsafe. It felt uncomfortable because the dysfunctional patterns were so deeply embedded in my nervous system that stepping into a friendship where there was no benefit on either side other than we were choosing each other, that's a kind of intimacy I had not experienced. And that became the backbone of what intimacy can feel like and what I'm always looking for in all of my relationships.
I think we talk so much about healthy relationships, and we don't always talk about how it can also feel like a threat to your nervous system, that like you'll die of boredom or that because it's not intense. One other thing I want to comment on, Erin, because that was amazing. When you grow up with neglect, right? I think love becomes like a finite resource, or connection becomes this finite resource, and we need to like grip onto it, or we're afraid it's not this abundant thing that we can have again. I love that you brought up that, like, you know, intimacy doesn't just happen in romantic relationships. There's really like infinite ways for us to connect to things. But I know that for myself, you know, part of what locked me into some of these type of situations was this idea that like, if it wasn't this, it was nothing, or that if it wasn't this, it was me. And that did not, like, I was not somebody that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. You know, I was actually trying to kind of get away from me through the connection with someone else. So I'm going to bring it back to narcissism for a minute. And I actually did not alert you that we were going to talk about this topic, but I know you're going to hang. I want to talk about narcissism a little bit just because we've been talking about that on the podcast. I feel like relational compulsion and narcissistic abuse dynamics maybe go hand in hand every single time. So if you wouldn't mind just talking about that, the addictive part, the compulsive part, when it comes to being in relationship with people that might have a personality disorder.
Yeah, great question. So first, I like to kind of give my understanding of personality and character disorders because I think it's really helpful. Much like Robin, I haven't heard your most recent podcast on this, but I know we're very aligned. I don't feel that it's always helpful to like over pathologize the other person or over focus on them. At the same time, it's so important to recognize it because it is a very specific kind of crazy making. And when I work with couples and families, one of the things that I do in my curriculum is we talk about this idea of everybody having their own reality. Like you can go to a movie and see the same film and walk away with a completely different understanding. Now, the problem with someone with a personality disorder, whether that be narcissism or borderline or any of them, is for them, someone challenging their perception of reality or the construct of reality that they're operating in becomes either an attack, an ignore, a blame, a defend. Like someone with a disorder like that cannot tolerate there being a different experience because they have built up their sense of self around the construct of the reality they're operating in. So let me try to explain this. In order to be relational, it's okay that people have different experiences. And we have to be able to say, okay, I hear that your experience is different, and create a shared experience where there's acceptance and empathy and consideration for the other person's experience, right? What happens when you're in relationship with a personality disorder is they're not able to reciprocate that. So when you add relational compulsion onto that, the empathetic person, the person who is able to say, oh, I see that. I see why you would feel that way. I understand that. They end up over functioning and joining the other person's reality to get the love that they want or that they think that they want, right? They're looking for that attachment to that person. And this is a setup for relational compulsion because it means that you have to self-abandon your reality to participate in the other person's reality. And the reason this can feel so confusing to people is often in the beginning, the shared reality is bigger, right? Because the narcissist or the person with a personality disorder, you fit into their projection. Otherwise, I guarantee you would not be in their life because
Nope.
they would literally like not notice you. So if you fit into their projection, whatever that is, like they think you're the hot person that they've always wanted to date. They think you have money. They think you have access. They think that something about you fits into their drama of their life, their construct of their reality, right? You fit into it. So you step in and at first it feels fantastic. Sometimes it feels like the best connection you've ever had because it's kind of like getting cast in a play and you fit the role perfectly and everyone loves you because you're the perfect actor or perfect actress for that role, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like in the beginning. That's what people call love bombing, right? There's this feeling of I fit, we fit, and it's because you've been enrolled into this person's construct of reality. The problem is the moment you start to individuate from that role, whether it be because you've evolved, you've changed your mind, or the person with this construct has changed their reality to suit their personality in some way, then you get gaslit, attacked, blamed. Everything that you do outside of this role that they have for you that is fixed, that you don't have control over, that becomes either non-existent or they blame you, they humiliate you, they bully you until you step back into this role that they have for you. And it gets really crazy making when it's a long-term relationship because they can change the terms of that role and you better shift. Like if the director says, nope, you no longer are giggly, you have to be serious, and because they're the director of their own reality and you are not willing to step into this new role that they've given you, then literally you can't be in relationship with this person without self-abandoning. So if you pair someone who already has this relational compulsion, right, which is I'm going to always leave myself to relate to another in some kind of compulsive way, which is where there are different types of relational compulsion, but one of them is the more addicted type, the one who goes into fantasy, the one who overfunctions, the one who's got more of the codependency flavor. You add attraction, chemistry on top of relational compulsion paired with a personality disorder, and it is a recipe to like rocket launch into an insane dimension of insanity. I mean, it is literally the most toxic dynamic you can find. Did that make sense or did I make it too complicated?
Oh my gosh, it makes perfect sense. I was literally listening to you going, and this is exactly why you are on the podcast at the end of us talking about narcissism. I think that it makes perfect sense, Erin. And my next question is like, given all of that, because I'm like cringing listening to it, you know, as someone who's lived through it myself and gotten out on the other side. Can you explain to us why it is so hard to leave these dynamics? Because a lot of times people wake up to how toxic this is.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe even get to a place where they realize I can't change this other person.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they don't even like this other person anymore. Maybe there's no relational compatibility anymore. And all of the logic is thrown out, right?
Yeah.
Why do they stay? Or why is it so hard to leave something that is this unhealthy? And maybe even when you know it.
Yeah. Well, this is a great question for me in particular, because in my book, I talk about a relationship. I call him Josh. Do not worry, that's not his real name.
He's Josh for today.
He's Josh for today. He's Josh in the book. I actually didn't like him, which is one of the reasons he was my quote unquote, like relational compulsion, love addiction bottom, is I actually like thought he was a terrible person, but I couldn't stop. And it went on for 3 years. And I think that for me, like in past relationships that were addictive that I couldn't leave, I did actually like the people. Like I was in my mind truly in love with them, which is what we're talking about is so hard to see it. But it was almost like the universe was like, we're going to give you someone you actually can't stand to do this dance with. So you can see how clearly this has nothing to do with that.
Wow.
Right. This is like a different thing. So this guy that I could not leave, honestly, not to get like way too intimate too quickly, we were reenacting early childhood trauma. I think that's like the simplest way to put it. And again, it's a very complicated answer, right? Because there are so many different ways that factor into why people don't leave. So typically it's related to early childhood trauma. It might be related to healing a mother wound or a father wound. It could be related to healing a wound with a sibling, with an early childhood friend. It in some cases, and this is another reason there's a whole section in my book called The Biology of Inheritance. It could be epigenetic, like it could be historical, and almost like the young adult male client that I worked with, one of the things he grappled with was he felt like he had pretty good attachments to his parents. So he was always like, why do I have this? Every book I read about this says I have to have had childhood trauma. But when we went back a couple generations, he had this deep history in his lineage of dysfunction. And so even though his own biological parents didn't appear, which I could make an argument otherwise, but did not appear to him to have given him much of this wounding, he was able to look at his grandparents and his great grandparents and go, okay, maybe I inherited some of this nervous system, like setting and wiring, and it's shifted my biology that made me more vulnerable to this. And then he had some adolescent and like early adulthood trauma that tracked onto all of this, but he had so much shame of like, nothing bad happened to me. I wasn't sexually assaulted. I wasn't, molested. I wasn't abandoned. I wasn't adopted. He's like, I don't understand why this is so hard. So the answer is really layered. But I think at the end of the day, if we were to look current day, why someone can't leave is because their nervous system is wired that this dangerous thing is safe, or this dangerous thing is safer than the unknown. And part of the work is getting people to see that anything is better than this dangerous situation, whether that be the unknown, being alone, like whatever it is. And the only way I have learned to help people with that is to gently teach them to build a sense of self, understand their own values, start to find friendships and other relationships that embody those values so that they believe it exists. So even if they can't see it in a romantic relationship, like I did an intensive with a male client who was having trouble ending one of these toxic relationships. We did his personal values. And I said to him, okay, how many of these values does this partner reflect? And he was like, I don't know, like 2 out of 15 of them. Yeah. And I said, think about one of your best friends right now. He said, okay, I got it. I said, how many of the values does this best friend reflect? He said, oh, like 14 out of 15 of them. And I said, exactly. So it's less about me convincing him to leave. And it's more about me saying, do you want to step into more alignment with who you want to be in this world based on your own values? And yes, it honestly, I still work with this client. He's still struggling, but he is free of this relationship because we started with not what's wrong with her, what's wrong with you. We started with who are you and what's out of alignment. And that's usually much more effective for people.
Agreed. I mean, I have people come in and they'll be like, I have to get out of this relationship right now. And I go, okay, we can't do that. We might not be able to do that right now, just because like with, drugs and alcohol, if you're not really truly ready to stop, you're probably going to have a more shameful experience of relapsing and going back. So I like to go, hold on, we're going to put this person to the side. You and I are going to work on building a life in which you need to escape from less, and we'll come back around, because like you're saying, the more you're connected to your values, the more, of an authentic yes it is to say no to these type of dynamics. So I think maybe a simplified like add-on to what you just shared is the pain scale, like coming back to that. And I think that when people are like, why don't you just leave, which is a rational, logical thought, what's really happening is that we're so accustomed to that 7 and the pain that goes along with that. And that is truly unique for each individual. Maybe it's their unavailability. Maybe they're cheating on you. Who knows what it is, but whatever it is, it's familiar to what you experienced growing up most of the time. But in order to leave that 7, you have to elect to go up the pain scale, right? Like if it's like, okay, I'll use myself as an example. I never understood why I couldn't break up with anybody, because if I did and they didn't come like pounding on my door with like, a band and airplanes with like banners saying you're the love of my life, I want you back, I felt rejected. And so when people would go like, well, what do you care? You broke up with him, or why don't you just break up with this person? What was really happening was I would have had to face my rejection wound. And I had built a life that was protecting me from ever touching it, even though technically I was just replaying it over and over again. So in order to leave these things, we have to elect to feel worse, because we have to walk straight up nose to nose with the feelings that hurt us and we didn't feel like we had power in, and take our power back.
Yeah.
So I had, we have to elect to go up that pain scale to like an 8 or a 9. And then what also can happen, which is what you mentioned earlier, is maybe the other person leaves, because maybe we start putting some boundaries in place, and maybe we aren't as tolerant to things as before, and the other person leaves. And that is where we get thrown into what's called relational withdrawal, which you and I are going to talk about today. But I believe that like attachment complexity of like, you have to look at your own wounding, which is what you're trying to escape through the fantasy of this relationship, is also a big part of why it's so hard, layered, and complex to just leave.
Absolutely. And before we get into the relational withdrawal, I want to like tell people this is not new information. If you look at someone who's addicted to opiates, what they will tell you is they can't manage their pain without the opiate. What they don't realize is the opiate has created a pain sensitivity syndrome. So if they come off of the opiates, they will initially feel significantly worse, and no other pain meds, no other stuff will work, because their body has adapted to experience pain more strongly, such that they need the opiate. It's the same with meth or coke, right? People talk about cocaine blues. And if you're taking a drug to create a huge rush of a chemical like dopamine, and there's more biochemistry involved, but I'll simplify it and just say you get this huge rush of dopamine. Well, what happens is your dopamine receptors start to downregulate, and then normal dopamine release feels not good. So then you have to go back to that meth or that coke to create a higher rush of dopamine to have the same normal experience that you might have had from going and having a nice conversation with someone. So it's the same process. It's just that these natural attraction, arousal, chemistry, which is very primal, right? If you have the wiring to create this cycle, which again, we've just talked about all the different ways that we get that wiring, then the same process will happen, because then a normal experience of connection feels boring. It doesn't give you the biochemical rush of someone who, you know, oh my God, this person's pain. The lead guitarist who won't make eye contact with anyone just came off the stage and asked me out. Like the rush of that, right? Like the one avoidant in the room, the one sex addict in the room, the one narcissist in the room is paying attention to you. The like chemical rush that creates means that the nice guy in the corner, right? Or the new friend who is like normal and not chaotic that wants to bond with you, that feels less exciting because it doesn't give you as much of a biochemical rush, much like a drug of abuse will give you that same increased experience. And so basically what we have to sell to people is, yeah, you're going to be uncomfortable for a little while, right? Much like coming off, I say to people all the time, there's a ton of neuroscience research that coming out of a toxic relationship is biologically similar to withdrawing from meth. Like just think about that.
I think if you know, man, it is. I mean, and you know, just from people coming, I mean, it is like eat whatever you can eat, get off the floor. It is so bad and so humiliating because we're not allowed to call into work and say, I'm heartbroken and my attachment system is on fire. You know, you can't talk to people about that because we look at what quote unquote is normal. I think grief is normal in relationships and you're going to grieve either way, no matter what. Withdrawal is like grief with like the most massive attachment wounding that has been lit on fire together.
Yeah. I always said that one of my visions, and maybe this is the beginning of me manifesting it, saying it here on your podcast, because you're such an amazing human that I believe that, is why don't we have rehabs for this? Like we have detox stabilization for people coming off of drugs and alcohol. We've figured out that will kill people. Well, guess what else will kill people? Sudden relational withdrawal. Do you know how many people commit suicide or homicide in that state? Or do some kind of drug or get in a car intoxicated and kill themselves or someone else. I mean, this is when you look at like stats around like stabbings and murders. I mean, this is what we're seeing is unmitigated relational withdrawal. Sure, a lot of the time, that's what we're seeing.
I mean, they acknowledge it in the court systems, right? When it's a crime of passion as a lesser charge.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just think that so much of what you and I, our life's work, what I'm trying to do with this book, what you're trying to do with this podcast, what we do with our clients every day is taking the shame out of the fact that this is serious shit, right? It's not casual to just, oops, in a relationship with a narcissist, oops, in a relationship with a love avoidant, like, or on the flip side, I think avoidance. Okay. So this is just, I'm going to have a little side note here. Yeah. A lot of times when the conversation is around the compulsive, addictive side of this, the avoidants get a bad rap. They get called narcissist. I can tell you there's a lot of people in avoidant attachment or people that flip between anxious and avoidant, and that we call that ambivalent, who it is just as compulsive and it's just as painful, which is very different from like a detached sociopathic or person with some kind of pathology that they're defending. But there is a true relational avoidance that is a compulsion. And as someone who has both, I also feel like a lot of what my book is for people who have that as well, because that gets misunderstood a lot. They get labeled as like the bad one, the mean one, when like a lot of times actually the person who is more on the compulsive, addicted, anxious side will get help because they look crazier. Right?
For sure.
But the person on the avoidant side never gets help because society kind of validates their compulsion response, that they're somehow more contained or more in control, when really it's a compulsion as well. And they're in as much attachment pain as the people on the other side. It just looks different.
Yeah, I think you just queued us up to talk about attachment and the nervous system and how it plays a role in this, because earlier you were talking about danger in these relationships. And I believe that, you know, the way we experience love early on is it's kind of like the big mashup of how we experience love. And if danger or intensity or, lack was there, that's a part of what we're experiencing and what we call love. I believe there's danger in attachment. I don't think there is ever any danger in love. I don't think any of us want danger in that energy. So if you don't mind talking a little bit about, I know I'm asking you general bit. This is why I get a little with this podcast, because I'm like, it's all so nuanced, everyone. But
yeah,
we're on a podcast. So if you can tell us, like, whatever way you want to answer this, how does attachment and your nervous system play a role in being a part of these type of dynamics?
So I think one of the things that you and I think we both agree with this concept, but you can tell me if you don't, is that attachment theory, how it's currently taught, is so helpful from a like, oh my gosh, I never knew this before. Like, I love it when people get it for the first time. I think the downside to it, like so many other things, is that I believe in looking at it through, what am I doing today in this dynamic? Because yes, my history is important. It helps me understand my nervous system. But the truth is, our nervous systems are highly adaptable, right? So even if I have this wiring because of my parents for one attachment style over another, like I can adapt. Man, you want me to be avoidant? Yeah, I got that. You want me to be anxious? I got that. You want me to be ambivalent? It's like my nervous system can adapt. So I say all that to say that one of the ways that I teach attachment is there is the internal experience and then there's the behavioral experience. And so a lot of times when people are learning about attachment, they hear, oh, anxious. They think, oh, I have anxious attachment, or I am anxiously attached. But when I actually look at what they're doing, there's a lot more avoidance going on than there's not. Like, they're not returning the phone call because they're scared of the anxious response that maybe they've had in the past, right? And so what this tells me is that our nervous systems will adapt to the most effective safety version of behavioral adaptation. That was kind of a word salad, but I think you're getting what I'm saying. So the way the nervous system plays a role here is that most of us who have trauma, relational challenges, probably people listening to this podcast, have learned how to have a set of archetypal behavior patterns that we step into in order to feel safe. And this is something I talk about in my book. I have these 9 archetypes of codependent relational compulsion and 15 archetypes of the relational compulsion patterns that show up with attraction. So the relational addiction side, which is the more traditional love addiction, the patterns that I see in the ambivalent attachment side, and then the patterns I see in the avoidant attachment side. So when I teach this to people through attachment, is I say, okay, here's the broad attachment categories. Great if you see yourself. Great if you can identify when you do most often. Now let's look at these archetypal behavior patterns, because this is where we start to get into the nuance, right? So historically, I've been more of an overfunctioner. I came into this world in the love addict category. I struggled with, fantasy and chasing men and doing all of this stuff, this kind of more classic. But really, when I got underneath it and I started to heal, I realized, oh man, I have the lone wolf in me as well. I have the philosopher who has to externally pathologize and analyze every situation in order to feel safe. And so I started to see how the nervous system's ability to adapt and evolve and really just drop into a different insecure attachment style is like actually kind of a miracle how much our nervous systems can evolve. And so I think I'm still answering your question, but my point is that attachment is a phenomenal overlay to understand what's happening. And we can shift attachment styles all the time. And so really understanding that one of the reasons I created the archetypes is so people could see themselves in all of the 3 insecure attachment styles more easily. And instead of judging it or saying, I'm a this or I'm a that, they can go, oh, the philosopher archetype is here today. Oh man, the lone wolf really wants to say F you and go move to another state. And oh, the fantasizer is really enjoying this TV show where I just get to look at this man on screen and focus on that. Right. And so really looking at these ways that our nervous system will adapt. And this definitely, the cool thing is in the work that you do and the work I do is we do parts of self-work. And you can go back into your own history and see where these archetypes were born, see where they showed up, and see where we've outgrown some of them, but they'll come back when the relational soup is mirroring an early stage of life. Like all of a sudden, I maybe haven't done one of these archetypes in years, and I'll bump into someone that reminds me of my mom. And before I know it, I'm practicing a relational archetype I haven't used in a long time. Mm-hmm. And the other side of this, and I don't want to get too far into the positive and the healing, but the good news about doing it this way is every archetype has a secure expression of itself. So like, let's say I'm talking about the victim archetype. The victim becomes the empowered one. Or I'm talking about one of the overfunctioners, which is the fixer, because I have that one in me hardcore. Well, the fixer can become, when paid, invited, and boundaried, can become a coach, right? Like I'm a relationship coach. So these archetypes, become our friends because they're just maladaptive, survival-based ways of our identity shifting to stay safe. And our nervous system is really good at that. Neurons that fire together, wire together. And they can serve us when we know who we are. So when we have secure attachment with ourselves and we're living an expression of our values, these same archetypal survival strategies become assets to us. So anyway, I can talk on and on and on.
Yeah, I mean, that's the good news, right? Because I mean, I know that for people that are in this looks like looking up at Mount Everest, being like, how am I ever, going to get over this or live without this person? Or I know a common fear is like, this is how I'm always going to date. And these are the type of people I'm always going to pull into my life. I agree with you. I'm so excited for your book to come out. Like I didn't get to read that part. And I love how you're breaking things down because I do agree with you that there's still a lot of nuance in attachment that I don't know if anybody is speaking clearly to, like you and I have talked about it. Like if you're anxious, you're avoiding yourself. If you're avoidant, the avoidant behavior is fueled by anxiety. Like we're doing a little bit of everything. But to me, when we experience relational trauma, it's like this fork in the road happens and we go, do I prioritize the connection or my authenticity representing your relationship to yourself, right? Like when you say, and then I ladder them back to my values. It's like, if you're not in relationship with yourself, you might be able to answer what your values are from your brain or what we've heard, but it's not from like a place of coming from your truth. I believe a secure attachment is when we go back and bring both, that we could have the connection and also stay connected to our authenticity. Have you ever heard of the pillow analogy? Did I ever talk to you about this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the pillow analogy that like there's 3 pillows in any relationship with 2 people, your pillow, middle pillow, relationship pillow, other pillow, the other person's pillow. Those I look at it as an L because I teach it in a matrix. And so I'm seeing it that way. But like the insecure attachment styles are, disconnection with self and authenticity. Yes. And they're not all bad. In fact, man, like when I think about even hypervigilance, for instance, which can be a really painful survival pattern for me in relationships, man, sometimes my hypervigilance is the one to call on. Like there are times where like, if I need to get something done or I need to influence something, like, man, I love it. But like as a relational strategy, it is no good. And possibly the loneliest place I find myself in this life when I'm like, oh my God, it's all on me and I have to fix this and I have to fix the outcome. So I don't want to make like this super complex because you and I have been in this for so long, so we can talk about it, till the cows come home. The simple kind of what do we do when we're in it is you've got to find a relationship with yourself. And I know that that's like it's way easier said than done. And yet you did it. I did it. Everyone that's come to us has found that place. There are people out there. There is more information on attachment style, narcissistic relationship dynamics and abuse, love addiction, let me rephrase that, relational compulsion than ever before. So I think one of the most important things as we like wrap this up and go, okay, well, what do you do if you're in these dynamics is like, don't isolate.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just one of the main components of these relationships is you get a lot of shame. What do we do when we have shameful behavior or things in our life? We hide them. Mm-hmm. Or maybe we've burned everybody out that would listen to us because they're so sick of us doing the same thing in the same cycle and talking about the same person. I don't like your boyfriend. Don't talk to me about him, whatever. Mm-hmm. The most important thing is that you lean into any type of aligned support. And Erin, I know you get this, like not everybody is the aligned support, even professionals maybe aren't well-versed in this, or, I think it's really important when they've lived through it themselves.
Yeah.
Because the depth of the pain is really hard to understand unless you've lived through it yourself. So, my hope in this podcast is that even one person, if it's more than one, that's beyond my wildest dreams. But one person listening to this goes, oh my gosh, I'm in this dynamic. There's a way out. There's help out there. So what would you say to someone who maybe is waking up to this, found themselves here, and is connecting to this message? What's the next best steps?
Well, I think it depends on where they are in the process. Right? Because I just want to, I take this very seriously, what I'm going to say next. If you are in danger, whether that be from someone else or from yourself, like please go seek professional support. And, one of the things that I really thought about when I was writing this book is like really getting clear with people that 10 out of 10 pain that comes from being left or from leaving a situation where you felt like you had no choice, it's called no choice withdrawal, is devastating. So I would say if you're listening to this and you're in that kind of pain, please get immediate support. Now, if you're listening to this and you're more just like, oh man, every relationship I ever had has been like this, and I'm on the dating apps and I don't know what to do, or I'm in a relationship where like I know I'm at the 7, I don't need to leave now, I'm not in physical danger, but I don't want to continue this. If you're in that kind of pain, I would say, get a coach like Robin, like me, get a therapist who understands attachment and trauma and relational trauma specifically. There are some really good online. One of the great things about the internet is that it's much faster than the publishing world. So even though there may not be a ton of books out there that I can recommend specifically, there are a lot of good accounts online talking about this. I'm not a big like Instagram girl. I mean, you can look me up if you want, but there's a lot of places online that you can go and get free content around this. And going back to what Robin said earlier about the pillow, that one of the most important things in all of this is remembering that you always want to keep one foot in your authenticity in yourself. And if you're listening to this and you have no idea what that means, then I would say start there. Go work with someone who can help you understand who you are. What is authenticity for you? Because I also know there was a time in my journey where I thought that I knew who I was, but really I was a culmination of all of the relational trauma I'd ever had and the ways that it shaped me. Now, to be fair to myself, because I think being a little hard, I've been told by other people that I've still been pretty much the same person through all these years and years and years, but I didn't know that. Like I couldn't see that clearly. And so, trying to get clear on like who you are, who your values are, what matters to you most, like keep a foot in that. And if you don't know where that is, that orientation point is so important because no matter how much help you get, ultimately that help, good help, is going to point you back to who are you? because I can tell you who I am and how I got here, but who you are is your orientation point that you need to go back to. So yeah, I would just say be gentle with yourself. Notice if there's shame voices coming up. One of the other things I tell people is if you're trying to get support and someone shames you, it doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means they may not be aligned right now for you to talk about this. Because I burned people out in my relational compulsion. There were a lot of people who are good-hearted people who wanted nothing to do with me when I was hitting bottom around a lot of this. So I don't want you to necessarily write those people off, but just recognize that, some of them you could probably write off, but some of them might just be burned out. And that might be part of your lesson, because some of the people that had boundaries with me when I was hitting bottom around this, it's the same as drug and alcohol addiction. Them no longer talking to me was part of me hitting bottom. Like I had an AA sponsor who said to me, I will not talk to you about Josh again until you meet me at an Al-Anon meeting. And that was the beginning of my introduction to what codependency was, that eventually led me to understanding what love addiction was, that eventually got me on the right path. If my sponsor hadn't been kind of a hard ass with me, I might still be doing the dance with that guy.
Agreed. I do believe that the universe is going to create discomfort in our life so that we wake up. So totally agree. I also think that in that pillow analogy, the name of the game is to just keep one foot on your pillow. And I know that, like, when I rewind back to a therapy session I had a long time ago, and she told me I just needed to love myself. That's kind of like a similar, like, get one foot on your pillow. And I was like, wait, how? Like, I would love to do that. How, it's what we're talking about, finding the right support, reconnecting back to yourself, whether that's through a podcast, a book, connecting to the right professionals. I would love to give an invitation today, because I had some people go to my TikTok post on one of the last couple episodes and tell their stories. You don't have to tell your story on the comment section, but just to say you survived it, because I think when you're in it, it's so isolating, and it almost feels like you're driving off a relational cliff that you will never, like, you are going to lose the love of your life. But I know, Erin, because we've talked about this, like, I really believe that people with narcissistic personality disorder, these type of really traumatic relationships are probably the most efficient and effective way to wake you up to your self-love. It's not to stay a victim. It's not to repeat this lesson for the rest of time. Like, without these type of dynamics, I wouldn't be here doing the type of work I'm doing. I wouldn't be the person I am today. So I think it's just really important that we highlight there is such a better life on the other side of this. And this kind of comes back to the addiction piece. I think that you hear about that in rooms of AA, like, keep going. There's life on the other side of this. But like when you were saying you didn't know yourself as much, or maybe you weren't the same, like, you just know yourself more deeply now. You're more deeply connected to your values. You're more deeply connected to your patterning, and you're more deeply connected to the self-love. And I do believe I read this from a little excerpt, Erin. I'll have to read it to you after the podcast, but I read it in a previous episode. It was from the 4 Agreements, where the summary is like, no one will ever abuse you more than you abuse yourself.
Yeah.
And there's something about this that a mirror comes up, and it's not a horrible mirror. It's a mirror of love from the universe, from God, that says, don't treat yourself like this. Yeah. Because everything we allow other people to do, I think we did to ourselves first.
Yeah. Yeah. My assistant said this to me the other day. She said, everything is feedback. Everything is feedback. And one of the things that I've gotten so clear on in my work is it's less about they're wrong and I'm right, or I'm wrong and they're right. It's less about, is this aligned for me? Okay. And not to sound like all woo woo or manifester or whatever. But the truth is, it's okay if people are narcissists. I don't have to go and fix that. It's okay if people have different values than me, right? Like, it's okay if people misunderstand me. Ooh, that one is hard, but it is okay. I do not have to manage that. All I have to do is ask myself, is this like guiding me towards alignment with myself? Is this guiding me towards loving myself? And if it's not, then I can unpack it and analyze it. And I can also just move on, because the universe will keep bringing me the lesson if I don't get it this time. So,
as you're talking, I actually do have a favorite book on this topic. It's All the Way to the River by Elizabeth Gilbert.
Oh, yes. No, for sure.
Because it's more of like her storytelling than like, this is facing love addiction. But man, that book I think might be my favorite.
So here's what thank you for this, because I almost feel like I know you didn't do this, but I feel like this is like a layup for me, because here's what I'm going to say. I loved that book. I was in awe of her radical vulnerability and honesty about how dark and messy this shit gets, because I can tell you most people are not telling the truth. And that woman told the truth. Yep. And I think she is one of the bravest people for doing that. I also heard some like criticism of the book, which was valid, but I was also like, listen, if you've lived this, none of that criticism matters. Like, she told the truth in a way that like people that early started writing about their addiction stories, like their drug and alcohol and like heroin addiction stories, like to me, that book is one of the most radically real and honest versions of this ism that we're talking about that I've ever read. Yeah. And I went and heard her talk about the book publicly about, I don't remember, it was like maybe 6 months ago. And she only took one question because she's pretty introverted. And the one question, I'm pretty sure, is the question most people have when they finish her book and they see themselves, which is, well, what do I do now? Yeah. And one of my answers is read my book, because my book is, what do you do now? It's the answer to the question people are asking when they finish her book, because my book is yes, it has some of my story. Liz Gilbert is always going to tell a better story than me. That is like her craft. She's a freaking magician. But my book is more about, okay, what now? What do I do now? And so that is my invitation to people. If you did read that book and you resonated with it, I guarantee my book has a lot for you.
Oh, I know it does, because I just read a good portion of it. So, Erin, I know you and I could talk forever, and I have a feeling you're going to be back on this podcast. And I would like to give you an invitation that when this book is birthed and out, that maybe we do like a little series or some things around it. And maybe you could even like guest host and give me a dang break here and there. That'd be awesome. I would love that when it comes out. But Erin, tell us, like, I know you're still in the process of finishing it. How do the listeners access you if there is someone who's in that position and going, what do I do next? Tell us how they can connect to you, the work or the book, before it comes out.
Great question. So I had taken a long break from social media, and I'm stepping back in through the platform of Substack. I've been told that's a great way for me to start to release portions of the book, and I'm still building that platform. But if you look up Love Is Not a Drug on Substack, you will find me. Don't worry if there's nothing on there yet. It's coming soon. I'm starting to probably post stuff in June. So very, very soon. And that is where I'm going to start to release snippets of the book, get some like real-time audience feedback. And also, if you subscribe, you will get updates as I get, my next steps around a publisher and like where you can find it. And anything related, like any courses or anything related to this book that I have yet to fully decide on what I'm creating, but that will be the easiest way. And of course, you can go to my website, innerray.com, and connect with me. But specifically around this book, I would recommend going to Substack and following or subscribing there.
Okay, awesome. And we will put your website down below. That's also a great way if somebody wants to connect with you through individual coaching. They can find you there. But I'm so grateful. One, Erin and I have known each other for a very long time. And for us to be in a place now where we're prepping your book and we are taking both the experiential learning we have and the learning that we've had as coaches over a decade. And now, being able to help more people is like a dream. Like, I can't believe we're here.
I know. And Robin, I really need to give you some serious credit here, which I know you were not asking for it, but I'm going to give it to you, which is that there was a time after we left our last organization together where I was avoiding topics like attachment and I was avoiding topics like love addiction because I was so desperately trying to reshape who I was, what was authentic for me. And I'll never forget a conversation with you where I was like, oh, you mentioned attachment. I go, yeah, I don't teach that anymore. And I think we both started laughing because I was like,
I'm laughing as you're saying it because it's so ridiculous. I mean, we should probably say that we came from a very toxic, but it wasn't like you left this wonderful organization and we're like, I'll never talk about attachment ever again. It was a lot of the things were weaponized and used in ways that weren't ethical. But yeah, I mean, we had a conversation. I was like, Erin, you can't do that.
I know. I was like, yeah, I think you're right. And like, I don't want to sound like I was doing anything unethical, but I just like realized that I was avoiding the very thing that I think I was born to talk about. I was avoiding talking about it. So as I started to step back into this material and realize that like there's room for all of us, there's room for many voices on this topic. And actually, I have an incredibly powerful story and message around this. So thank you for your role in kind of bringing me home to this topic again. And it's taken me several years, but I'm ready for it. So thank you for having me on here. Thank you for this amazing platform that you have created. Like I try to have a podcast, so much work, and I'm not going to say I'm never going to do it again, but I'm just so grateful for because both of us, I think, have a value around accessibility and around getting this message to as many people as, I mean, I will speak for myself. I have a value around accessibility and getting this information out to as many people as I can. And I know that working with me can be pricey. So my heart is in this. So if you're listening and you are interested in this information, please support Robin's podcast. Please consider following or subscribing me on Substack because this is one of my core values is accessibility and I need your help. So
Erin, I'm so grateful to have been a part of that journey. And I just think it's so important. You know, I'm listening to you talk and you are obviously brilliant and intelligent and have transmuted so many of your traumatic experiences into wisdom. And you are one of these people too. And I was I've been in this situation too. And you know, there was nothing special about me. There's a lot special about you. I don't mean it that way, but there was nothing like exceptional that allowed us. I mean, we white knuckled it. We struggled. It was hard. I think when we had experienced things like this, it wasn't as, you know, readily available as far as information out there. And I'm also deeply passionate that I hope people see that there is life on the other side of this. In fact, there's a way better life and that this is a healing process. It's not just this horrible breakup. There's so much purpose in getting through this. And I know there's listeners because I know some of my listeners have come to me or there are people that you and I have known throughout our adventure here as coaches that like have lived through this and they get it. And it's something to celebrate. But now I look back and go, every last bit of pain, every rock bottom that I hit was the most purpose driven. It led me back to self-love, self-understanding. I have never been in this connected of a relationship, this kind of a relationship with myself. It's so available. And I believe that at one point in my life, I don't know that I would have believed that was true. So I hope you and I serve not only as people who are bringing information and expertise on this topic, but as two homegirls who went through it ourselves and transmuted all of that pain into light. And then I think the icing on the cake is that light doesn't stay contained. Like we share that with other people. Maybe at a minimum, you're less shaming to other people, or you hold safer space, or you become a coach, or it enriches some aspect of your life and your gifts. But I know it's a heavy topic. I know it's a complex topic. And I know that sometimes therapy and coaches like Erin and I are hard to afford. But like you're saying, we are doing everything we can to make this as available to people as we can. Like this podcast is free.
Mm-hmm.
I am available by DM if you guys ever want to reach out, if there is some sort of support, whether it is a organization, a book, a podcast. I know that I mentioned on a previous episode, the Meadows. If you do find yourself in acute withdrawal, or if you're in a situation where you feel like you might harm yourself, the Meadows is an amazing place. They are expensive. These places do cost money. I do think, though, probably one of the best investments you could, I mean, if not the best investment you could ever make in your life. So thank you for being on here, Erin. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Are you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to add it. If you can't afford the Meadows, there are, I feel like what is starting to crop up are some more bespoke options. Like there are, like, if you really do a little bit of research, you may find like people like me, I do intensives, you know, there are people out there trying to create a space where you can safely stabilize through this and not have to spend $90,000 a month on a treatment center. So I can't guarantee that I can help everyone find that kind of space. However, there are people out there trying to do that. And SLAA, if you're not opposed to 12 steps, yeah, they have a lot of literature on surviving withdrawal. It's free. And to be honest, I got all of my help until I had money from 12 step. Like the first 5 to 7 years of my journey was mostly 12 step, which is free. So I just wanted to put a little plug in for that. It's not perfect, but it is free.
And you can do 4 meetings a day if you need to. And you can go into those rooms, be it via phone, Zoom, online, in person, and say the same thing. I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying, over and over again. And people go, we're so glad you're here, one day at a time. So yes, totally. And I talked about some of these resources in a different episode, but
oh, sorry.
No, please repeat it. We need to hear it as many times as possible. And Erin, you're such a great resource for me in the lane of addiction and treatment and recovery. So anything you have to share is so valuable here. But thank you as a friend. I mean, I love that we started this podcast before we even hopped on, laughing uncontrollably for about 10 minutes. And then I'm trying to start it and then she's laughing and I'm going, stop it. It's such a gift to just have the relationship we've had and how comfortable I am both professionally and personally. So thank you for being a gift in my life and to so many others. And I know we're going to talk more about this concept. And we're here to support your book launch. So please come back and tell us about it because we want to know more and we have so much to learn from you. And now I'm going to have a really great love addiction book to send to people that need it. So keep going, Erin.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor and a privilege and a joy to be on this podcast, a colleague of yours and a friend of yours. So,
okay. And before we go, I was going to say this at the beginning because I didn't even tell Erin, but I'm going through a little thing called perimenopause.
Oh,
and given the day, we have no idea what will work, what will kind of work, what will not work well. And so before I hopped on here, I wanted to get a friend of mine a cake because he just got a new job opportunity. So I called Whole Foods to ask them if they could, decorate a cake with congratulations in a short amount of time. But I forgot to say cake. I said, could you write congratulations down? And can I get it in like the next 24 hours? And the woman just paused and said, do you mean on a cake? And I was like, what kind of podcast episode am I going to have today?
Well, I get it. I, have been through my own hormonal ups and downs. I actually had a migraine earlier and I texted you and I'm like, I might transpose some words. I don't know what's going to come out of me, but you know what? The universe has our back. And we say what we need to say. We get it out there. We do it human.
We showed up anyways, and we did the best we could. So I hope you guys got something from this podcast. Erin, you were amazing. My brain worked as much as it was going to work today. But next time I'm going to include cake when I'm ordering a cake that needs to be decorated. So
that's a good baseline thing to add.
Yeah, it's not bad. It helps for understanding purposes. So, hey, we'll see you again on the podcast in the near future. Go get to writing and finishing this beautiful work that you're putting out in the world. And I'll see everybody next week. Bye.
Bye.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here and for doing this work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me over on TikTok at Robin Breckenridge or Instagram at Coach with Robin, where I share even more insights, tools, and conversations around boundaries, self-trust, relational healing, and so much more. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and personal growth purposes only. The insights and tools I share are based on my experience as a life and relationship coach and are meant for general guidance. Each person's story is unique, and the nuances of individual experiences can't always be addressed in this format. What's shared here may not be applicable to every situation, especially those involving abuse, oppression, severe mental illness, or systematic harm. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek support from a qualified mental health professional or emergency resources. Thank you for listening and for showing up for yourself in this way. Take care, and I'll see you next time.